Okay, so back in the 90s, there was this British studio named Rare, and they had this insane streak going on. They just kept putting out classic after classic after classic. We're talking Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Country 3, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, some awful movie tie-in game people like for some reason, Perfect Dark, Blast Corps, Half-Life, Deus Ex, Crash Team Racing, and Hatsune Miku Project Diva F2nd. But then they got bought out by Microsoft, and they kind of forgot how to make games for a while. And Kameo, Elements of Power, was released during these forgotten years. It was a launch title for the Xbox 360, which, considering the company it kept, may explain why anyone remembers it at all fondly. So in the game, you're this fairy lady whose sister is all jealous because you got shape-shifting powers and she didn't. So she throws a hissy fit, and she brings this troll lord back to life, and this kind of sets up one of Kameo's few redeeming qualities, which is, during the whole game, there's this crazy giant battle going on, Two Towers style, out in the Badlands, like the middle hub world. It's still kind of impressive even today if you ignore the fact that it's completely static and it has no bearing on anything, but it's a ton of fun just to kind of plow through these hordes of trolls with your horse, Epona. But you spend most of the game at the areas beyond the Badlands, which are filled with the ugliest characters I've ever seen in a video game. Am I supposed to feel compassion for these things? Revulsion? Do they deserve to live? Are they in pain? How did we get here? The reason you go to these areas is to free animal spirits and to fight bosses. This is Kameo's main concept and its largest failure. To start with, you need to fight a mini-boss to free each animal. You basically have to attack one of these light beings and then pick up his corpse and then fire it at the main mini-boss dude. But you're still doing that the 10th time you do it, it's just that there's like more light dudes. Or sometimes the big dark boss man kind of shoots out a wave. So after you defeat the dark man, you absorb the soul of the animal that was inside him. I mean, that's not a bad idea, and you could do a lot with that in the context of a video game, but Rare choose not to. So basically, each animal is the solution to a puzzle. And, you know, you think puzzle games, oh, these puzzles, you're going to learn something, and then you're going to progress, you're going to gradually use these skills you've learned in more difficult situations. That is not how Kameo operates. In Kameo, each creature solves a puzzle, and then each time that puzzle crops up, you use that creature to solve that puzzle. And that's what you do for the entire game. Okay, so take Flex. He's like this blue tentacle monster man. He can grab onto stuff in the distance. Now, in the area you unlock Flex, there are these weird blob mouth things. And they're always like sticking their tongue out at you. And mouths in video games are usually shorthand for feed something into this. You know, in Zelda, you would throw the bomb into the mouth and it would blow up, and they do that in every video game. Here, though, these are actually, the tongues that they're sticking out are actually grapple points for Flex. And so you spend the rest of this level just kind of grappling onto tongues. And there's no logical reason why you would do this, or why these mouth things are hanging out, or why they're situated where they are so that you can get onto platforms. It's just kind of, that's the puzzle in this area. And it makes absolutely no intuitive sense, and it's not fun. And it helps that there are giant boulders falling from the top of the mountain that you can't really see, and those are like the obstacles, so sometimes you get crushed by a boulder. Yeah. This is one of the 3 levels, basically, in the game, I should have mentioned. So yeah, I mean, okay, so that's one creature, and then you've got like a dragon, and he can light fuses. And then you've got a fish man, and he can swim. And then there's this boulder guy, and he like shoots his boulders out, and you use that to like if a guy has a shield, you can shoot the boulder over the guy with the shield, and then when it's coming back to you, it'll hit him in the back of the head and stun him. And that's kind of a cool idea, except that the shield guys only show up in one area, really, and it's the area where you get the boulder guy, and then after that, you never use the boulder guy for the rest of the game, because there's no reason to. So the whole game is built on this cool idea, and it just completely squanders it the entire time. I never once felt like I was using the creatures in a clever way, or in a way that subverted my expectations. It's just like, here's what you do with them. And then the whole game, you've got like, to drive home how much this is a Zelda game, you've got your little old British man who lives in your storybook, and he, you know, like Navi will be like, hey, you should try something. But this guy is like, hey, like he's always condescending. He's like, hey, check the book. I'll tell you what to do. And then you go into the book and he tells you exactly what to do. I don't understand. And then it's not just puzzles. There's also combat. And the combat is a complete mess. So here's the thing with the combat. So to switch monsters, you have like the face buttons, which is insane because those are the buttons you would usually use to do something in a game. So instead, all of your actions are on the 2 triggers. So you can hit left trigger, right trigger, or both triggers. So what happens is, okay, so take the plant guy, for example. The plant guy, to punch with his right hand, you hit the right trigger. To punch with his left hand, you hit the left trigger. That makes sense. That's a good system. But he also has this more powerful attack that you get by alternating the triggers. So you hit left trigger, right trigger, left trigger. And you have to do that pretty quickly. But he also has an attack where if you press both triggers, he'll go into the ground, so he can pop up and do an uppercut. So as you can probably imagine, what happens is you're doing left trigger, right trigger, left trigger, right trigger, and all of a sudden you're underground, and you didn't want to be, but the way the controls are limited to just 2 buttons on this controller is, there's no reason for it. And it's even worse because you can only have 3 characters on the face buttons at a time, so you spend most of the game holding one of those buttons and then picking a different character out of this wheel. There could have just been a button to bring up that wheel to switch into a character. Instead, they put... I really don't understand it. I'm going to take a quick break here, and we're just going to watch the game over screen because it's something special. Alright, so I've been kind of listing off some of my complaints with Kameo, but I think to really illustrate how much of a failure this game is, I think we need to look at the final boss fight. So, after just 3 levels, basically, and that's not a lot of levels. This is an extremely short game. But anyway, after you beat all those, I guess, and you finally get all the creatures, you are at the final boss fight, and the final boss fight is this big troll man, and also your evil sister, who may or may not be your sister because of like adoptive issues, I don't know. Anyway, they're like teaming up, they don't like each other, but they're teaming up and they're gonna fight you. And the most recent creature you got was this little bug dude who shoots mortars. So, I mean, I'm sure there's other ways to fight this boss, but the way I fought this boss was I just turned into the bug who shoots mortars and shot mortars at the boss until he died. And basically the only attack the final boss does is this thing where he hits the ground and this like 3 little like sparks run along the ground, and because you can move as the bug while you're firing, you can basically just sit there and shoot at him and kind of sidestep these like extremely easy to dodge little particles that are shooting at you. And like, you would think this game that is built entirely on transforming into different characters with different powers would take advantage of that during the final boss and be like, we're gonna put all these characters to the test. You're gonna have to show that you understand how to use each character and in which situation to use each character. But instead, all it is you stand there and shoot mortars at the boss, and occasionally he will like sigh, and then the little fairy lady will like laugh, and then enemies that are weak to the mortar will come at you, and you can basically just not even worry about them, just keep shooting at the boss. And what I did during this segment was I just leveled up the mortar dude and just stood there and watched his health bar just very slowly chip away. And then I beat him, and that was it. He didn't have a second form or anything. He just dies, and then you team up with your sister because she has like an epiphany for no reason, where she realizes that the clearly evil prophet lizard lady with the magic eyeball is evil and was playing you against each other the entire time. And then you like turn into Dragon Ball Z characters and rocket punch this troll, and they turn into stone for no reason, and then the game is over. And it's like, what? It's like they completely ran. It's like they didn't even run out of ideas. It's like they ignored the fact that there could be ideas. They just kind of came up with this concept, which would naturally lead to all these great gameplay designs and all these great level designs, and you could do so much with it, and they just put that all in a room and locked the door, and then they sat down and they made 3 levels in a boss fight, and then the game was over. Okay, I have one more thing I want to talk about. So the way you level up in this game is you don't get XP, you get fruit, and there's 100 fruit in the game, and you use these fruit to like buy skills for your guys. And I understand why they would do this, because they're trying to get people back into the world during the game, after the game, to try to explore, there's side quests you can do, and you can kind of find these fruit within the environment. And the problem is, not only are none of these side quests interesting, but the world itself is not very interesting. And I think this is where some of the creature abilities come into play, where you use some of them maybe in unexpected ways, but this whole system is so like hidden. You have to go into your book and then go to the creature and then go down, and then it'll show you names of abilities you can get, and you have to spend fruit on them. And I didn't even realize this was a thing until about a quarter of the way through the game. And even at that point, the skills are not interesting or useful enough for me to care about it. So basically what they've done is, by pushing focus onto this world, which is not very interesting, they've kind of marginalized the player's own progression through the game. Even more so because the player isn't asked to progress at all during the game. And I know it sounds like I'm ragging on this game. Well, first of all, I don't think it's a very good game, but I know that Rare have proven themselves able to take a formula and improve on it and build on it. They took Super Mario 64 and they turned it into Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, and I think in terms of ambition and game design, especially Banjo-Tooie is right up there with Super Mario 64. And here they took Zelda and they just kind of made it more boring and more condescending and more clunky and less interesting, and it has no charm. And there you go, Kameo, Elements of Power.